Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
It's good to be back.
Today, we're going to be looking into a recent event that happened just last week, actually. A pretty serious one. A U.S. military vehicle incident in Lithuania. And we've got a lot of news reports and official summaries to go through. And
Yeah, a lot of information came out.
our goal is to really get beyond the headlines.
Absolutely.
So beyond just kind of like the who, what, when, where, why, we really want to understand what were the key events, what was the international response, and what does this all tell us? What can we learn from this?
Yeah, and I think really right at the forefront, it's important to acknowledge that this incident resulted in fatalities.
Yeah.
So 4 U.S. Army soldiers from the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, which is part of the 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Wow.
They died in this incident. So that's something that we want to keep in mind as we go through the details.
Absolutely, and kind of respect the gravity of the situation as we're discussing this, right?
Absolutely.
So let's start with let's kind of unpack the sequence of events here, starting with the incident itself. So this happened on March 25th, 2025, near Pabradė, Lithuania. And we know the unit involved was this 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team, and the vehicle in question was an M88 Hercules armored recovery vehicle.
Okay.
Now, for those who don't know, this is not your average Jeep. This is a 63-ton behemoth of a machine.
Wow.
So, what exactly is the role of a vehicle like that in a brigade combat team?
Well, it's a good point to bring up because you're right. It's a huge vehicle. And the M88 Hercules is essentially the heavy-duty tow truck and the repair vehicle for armored units.
Okay.
So its job is to recover tanks and other large combat vehicles that have been damaged or become stuck.
Gotcha.
So it's critical for maintaining operational readiness in the field. And, in this case, the soldiers were engaged in a routine maintenance training exercise, working to repair and tow an immobilized tactical vehicle. So it was, in essence, a typical everyday task.
Okay.
Which just underscores, the unexpected nature of this tragedy.
Wow. So that's even more tragic when you realize it was just supposed to be another day at the office for these guys.
Exactly.
So then here's where things take a turn for the worse and get pretty serious. So this massive recovery vehicle somehow ended up completely submerged in a peat bog.
Okay.
We're talking about roughly 15 feet of water and thick mud.
Wow.
And the Lithuanian defense minister offered an initial assessment suggesting that the vehicle likely drove into the bog and then sank at a diagonal angle. And this wasn't discovered until the following day, March 26th. So can you speak to the challenges of a peat bog to a vehicle of that size?
Sure. Peat bogs present some unique hazards. The ground can appear solid, but often it has layers of highly saturated, unstable organic matter. So a vehicle as heavy as the M88 could easily break through that surface crust and become rapidly trapped. And the depth and the viscous nature of the mud would make any kind of recovery incredibly difficult.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
Think of it almost like quicksand, but for a multi-ton vehicle.
Wow.
Right.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It is.
So then, we obviously know the 4 U.S. Army soldiers were lost in this.
Right.
And initially on Monday, March 31st, the reports came in that it was 3 fatalities. And then tragically the next day, on Tuesday, April 1st, the 4th soldier was found. And understandably, their identities are being withheld while families are informed. But it's at this point that the technical details kind of fade, and the human aspect of it really starts to weigh heavily on everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the official statements that were released in the aftermath really convey the sense of grief.
Yeah.
And, the impact on the military community.
Absolutely. So we heard from General Christopher Donahue, the commander of U.S. Army, Europe and Africa, and he expressed his deepest condolences, of course, and importantly highlighted the unwavering support of our allies during this whole ordeal. And then there was Major General Christopher Norrie, the commanding general of the 3rd Infantry Division. He referred to these soldiers as dog-faced soldiers, which is a traditional nickname for the division. But his statement that the world feels darker really hit home for me.
Yeah, me too.
We also heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and he released a statement expressing his profound sadness and gratitude for the tireless efforts of those involved in the recovery operation.
Yeah.
And Secretary of the Army Daniel Driscoll made a firm commitment to finding and bringing home the last soldier.
Yeah.
So, these words, I think, really reflect the the gravity of the situation within the military leadership.
Absolutely.
But in the face of all of this tragedy, something really remarkable happened.
Yeah.
The immediate and comprehensive response from our allies was really something to behold. And this, to me, really underscores the strength and the practical value of NATO and these alliances that we have. So Lithuania, as the host nation where this occurred, immediately mobilized a ton of resources.
Right.
And what's especially notable is the speed and the breadth of Lithuania's support.
Yeah, I agree.
So we saw personnel from their armed forces, obviously, but then also various government agencies and even civilian experts all contributing to the effort.
Yeah.
They provided essential equipment, helicopters and drones for aerial reconnaissance, as well as heavy machinery needed for the pretty daunting task of getting that vehicle out of the mud.
Yeah.
They also offered crucial logistical and on-the-ground assistance.
Right. And it wasn't just Lithuania. Estonia deployed their specialized recovery dogs, Tilt and Make,
Oh, wow.
along with their handlers, and they arrived in the middle of the night.
Wow.
Like 2 a.m, and they were actively involved in the search by 7 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
And then Poland also stepped up. They mobilized engineers and sappers, and they contributed their personnel to help with the recovery efforts.
So you're saying this is a truly multinational effort
Absolutely.
to help our soldiers?
Yes, and I think if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this multinational effort is a powerful illustration of what an alliance in action looks like.
Yeah.
It wasn't simply a matter of expressing sympathy. It was about tangible support on the ground.
Right.
During a very stressful and emotional situation, you had hundreds of individuals from the U.S. Army, U.S. Navy, the Lithuanian, Polish, and Estonian armed forces, plus the Lithuanian government and civilian organizations all working together.
Yeah. And I think, what's really impressive to me is the specifics of Lithuania's contribution.
Yeah.
We learned about the rapid deployment of their diverse, the fact that they provided all sorts of equipment.
Yeah.
And even the presence of their defense minister and their prime minister at the site.
Yeah.
Really showing how seriously they were taking this.
Yeah.
And get this, reports indicate that Lithuania did not request any reimbursement for all of these resources that they provided.
Well,
What does that tell you about the nature of this alliance?
Well, I think it speaks volumes about the level of trust and shared commitment within NATO.
Yeah.
To offer that much assistance without expecting, immediate financial compensation,
Yeah.
I think really underscores, that genuine sense of solidarity and mutual support.
Yeah.
And it really moves beyond, just a transactional relationship into something that's built on shared values and a commitment to collective security.
I completely agree with you there. And, we've got some really powerful statements that were given that really highlight this allied strengths that you're talking about.
Yeah.
General Donahue specifically mentioned how the U.S. was leaning heavily on our allies. And an unnamed Army official noted how this level of immediate and comprehensive support really counters any criticism that we sometimes hear about the commitment of NATO allies.
Right.
Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda offered his nation's condolences and solidarity. Their defense minister said, "We don't leave our allies behind."
That's a powerful statement.
Yeah, it really is. Colonel Martin O'Donnell from Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, or SHAPE, said, "Allies helping allies."
Simple and to the point.
Exactly. And Lieutenant General Charles Costanza from VCOR expressed his gratitude to all of the nations that were involved, and also specifically mentioned the U.S. Navy and the Army Corps of Engineers for their specialized assistance.
Wow.
So what do you think? What do all of these quotes tell you? They obviously go beyond just, factual reporting.
Yeah, I think they offer a glimpse into the emotional and strategic significance of international collaboration. They reinforce the idea that these alliances aren't just formal agreements on paper. They're built on real functioning relationships.
Yeah.
Of trust and mutual aid.
These are real friends coming to our aid when we need it.
Exactly.
So beyond the immediate operational response, we also saw expressions of condolence and recognition. As we mentioned, the Lithuanian president offered his nation's condolences.
Right.
And then the Archbishop Metropolitan of Vilnius led a mass to pray for the fallen soldiers and the recovery teams.
Right.
So what's the significance of these gestures from the host nation? I mean, this is something that really stood out to me as going above and beyond.
I think it demonstrates a human connection.
Yeah.
That extends beyond military cooperation. They reflect a shared sense of loss.
Yeah.
And a communal desire to offer comfort and support during a difficult time. And it really highlights those deep ties between these allied nations.
Absolutely.
At multiple levels.
And then back here in the United States, we heard from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
Mm-hmm.
And they both spoke about the selfless sacrifice of military personnel.
Right.
Reminding us of the inherent risks involved in their service every day.
Yeah.
And these statements, I think, serve as an important acknowledgement of the ultimate sacrifice made by these soldiers and the profound impact it has on their families and the broader military community back home.
Yeah, I agree.
So now, as we kind of try to understand the bigger context of this event, it's important to note that there are investigations that are currently underway by both the U.S. Army and Lithuanian authorities. And their aim, of course, is to figure out what caused this accident.
Right.
So what do you think? Why are these investigations so important?
Well, understanding the factors that led to this incident is crucial.
Yeah.
Not only to, provide answers and closure, but to identify any potential safety lessons that can be learned.
Right.
To prevent this from happening again.
Absolutely.
So, those investigations are likely to involve a detailed examination of the terrain, the mechanical condition of the vehicle, and the procedures that were followed during the training exercise.
It makes sense to leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. So it's also important, I think, to place this event within the framework of Operation Atlantic Resolve.
Right.
Could you remind the listeners about the goals of that operation?
Sure. So Operation Atlantic Resolve is a key U.S. Army Europe and Africa mission.
Uh-huh.
And it's focused on enhancing security and stability in the European region.
Okay.
So its primary goal is to build credible ground deterrence along NATO's eastern flank.
Right.
So it's about reassuring our allies and partners of the U.S. commitment to collective defense.
Okay.
So the deployment of U.S. forces to countries like Lithuania is a tangible demonstration of that commitment to NATO.
Uh-huh.
So this context underscores the importance of these training exercises, even though, as we've seen, they do carry inherent risks.
Absolutely. And I think finally it's worth reflecting on the difficulty of this search and recovery operation itself.
Yeah.
This was in a dense forest, swampy, unstable terrain, and we're talking about trying to recover a 63-ton armored vehicle that was submerged 15 feet in mud and water.
What kind of obstacles did the recovery teams have to overcome in those conditions?
Well, I imagine the environmental conditions presented some pretty significant hurdles.
Right.
The unstable ground would have made it difficult to move the heavy recovery equipment. The poor visibility in that murky water would have made the divers' work very challenging and dangerous.
Right.
So, to successfully recover both the vehicle and the soldiers under those circumstances really is a testament to the skill and the determination and the coordination of everyone who was involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we conclude this deep dive into this incident in Lithuania, what would you say are the key takeaways for the listeners out there?
Well, first, I think the tragic loss of these 4 American soldiers during this training exercise really serves as a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who served.
Yeah.
Second, I think the immediate and extensive support provided by Lithuania and other NATO allies really underscores the practical strength and those deep bonds within the alliance. And finally, the ongoing investigations really highlight the commitment to understanding and preventing future incidents, even within the, inherently risky environment of military training.
So listeners, you now have a much more in-depth understanding of this event.
Yeah.
And have gone beyond just the initial news reports.
Right.
And hopefully you now understand the human impact, the complexities of allied cooperation when something like this happens, and the challenging realities of military training in such diverse environments.
Yeah, and I think one thing for you to consider is that in a world where the effectiveness and relevance of these international alliances is so often debated, this event, while deeply sad, really offers a compelling illustration of their practical significance and that deep commitment between allies in times of need. So what does this make you think about the often unseen efforts that are going on every day to, underpin military readiness?
Right.
And the vital role of these international relationships when unexpected challenges arise. It's a crucial point to ponder.
It really is. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
And we'll catch you next time.
See you later.